my first experience with games was probably when I was about 10 years old to Pong. And not much in between that and college. And during college, in the student lounges, there were like, arcade games. I remember marveling at how much the graphics had changed. And then the next real experience of games was the first home-built computer my husband made. And we did some games on DOS. And then there were PC games, and we spent thousands of dollars on PC games, of which I didn't play much then, but my husband did. And sometimes I would play with him. So we found a few games. They were kind of like puzzle games that we'd play together. We'd start on a Friday night and play through the weekend. Or if the game ended in 5 hours, we ended in 5 hours, but we played from beginning to end. And that was fun. But I had been pretty athletic in my life, and I had a lot of things and a lot of other interest in it, and it didn't interest me. What I had going on in my life was that I had a problem with alcohol and drugs as a teenager, and got sober through 12-step recovery very young. And so then I married pretty young, but I always was working on my recovery and my relationships with people. And I didn't, if anything, I thought technology was awesome. And the PC games are fun. And that's without, we got AOL. And at that time, AOL was by the minute. You paid by the minute. Our first bill was like $800 that I created myself from chatting. As soon as that month ended, I just didn't do it anymore. But that had to also do with my husband and I were starting to struggle in our marriage, our young marriage. And I quickly wanted to get some help and start working on that. And I could see that, hours and hours on the computer wasn't going to help me. Then my son was born, and we pretty quickly turned him on to games because the whole idea of gaming was still such an awesome thing to us. And by the time, the Lego games were out, or didn't mean to say the game name per se, but I started gaming with my son. And when we did it, and he was pretty young, it would be, an hour or two on and off. And then as he got older, we could play a game for 4 or 5 hours on a weekend. And even that seemed to be okay because we'd break it up with lunch and we'd do stuff. You could stop and start it. And I didn't think about it much. When my gaming really changed was a game my son asked me to play with him because he felt like, he couldn't do it alone because there was too many bullies out there on the internet. And so I jumped in with him about 2.5 years ago. It was May, or a little bit less than 2.5 years ago. And pretty quickly, it was going into the summer, I thought, all right, this would be a great thing. His friends would come over, we'd all game together. And a few months later, we were going out of the country, and I put a whole bunch of money into it. I thought, how great, on the plane, and when we're bored, there'll be a lot of periods of boredom. And it would be about 2 months later that I did notice just this complete shift in me. I went from playing gaming with kids to adults. I was like on fire. I thought it was so much fun, so creative. And my son was disappointed that I stopped playing with him and his friends, but I wanted to get better. I wanted to be the best. And this competitive thing came out in me that he would just kind of be disgusted by. But to me, that, if you're going to be good, that's what it's all about. And November rolled around again about 2 years ago, and at a Thanksgiving dinner, and this was like a turning point because my husband started talking to the people who invited us for dinner about how much I was gaming. And I was like, phew. My husband had been a gamer for years. The people who had dinner, I told them I wanted to, go rest after dinner. I wanted to game. I went upstairs and gamed. And when people tried to come get me, I was like, no, I've got this special event going on in this game. And I'd be all excited, just so excited to talk about it. And few people got angry with me, and my response, my perception was, you can do all the small chat you want, you can do your eating addictions. I was all about judging other people and absolutely offended, that they couldn't get it, how important this was to me. It was about what I wanted. And then my friend was like, wow, your husband's really hurt. I'm like, so what? I suddenly, it was like this turning point of I didn't care about anybody else's feelings or my sons. They have their games. They're going to have to just work it out while I do what I want to do, because I saw some other kind of like tournaments coming up in the game, and I was, needed to be prepared for those as well, and whatever it was going to take. And that's when it was definitely a turning point of starting to game all night long. I didn't really care what other people thought at that time, because it was kind of a joke. It was like the best thing alive. I was trying to turn people on to the games, and but that, December followed, and I absolutely didn't want to decorate for Christmas because it would take me away from my gaming. And plus, I had decorated for years alone. I mean, my gaming started being this thing, like me against my family, and kind of punishing them for them not participating. Like this was going to be me asserting my independence. That's like one take I had on it. So anyhow, these are the things that started leading up to gaming. So there would be another about a year and a half before I would hit a bottom. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what that looked like along the way without specifically going from month to month. Pretty much I was constantly thinking about my gaming schedule, how I could protect it, enlarge it. I obsessed at one point, and this would be in the last few months, I had a calendar, and I started calendaring anything that was going to get in the way of my gaming. And I was trying to figure out, how I could do it all, and how I could minimize those things that interfere with my game, literally what I was cutting out. So I had these conscious thoughts about cutting things out. I had a lot of anxiety about the weather and if it was going to affect my internet connection. I was obsessed about having batteries, cords, cubes, things to keep my games charged all the time. When I went to appointments, or restaurants, wherever, I would look for places to plug like backup batteries to keep the game. So I'd be prepared. I would, think about the conversations and relationships with people in the game that I was meeting. I'd keep in touch with them outside of the game, and those relationships became more important than my family and my friends, including in 12-step recovery. I told the people I sponsored, get a new sponsor. I'm not going to meetings anymore. I don't believe in God anymore. And, until I have any kind of desire, interest, you probably need to look elsewhere because it's just not for me. I filled up my time with thinking about strategy, reading gaming forums, watching YouTube videos, following streamers. When I wasn't gaming, those are the things I was doing. And sometimes I'd do that while I was gaming. So I'd have multiple devices going, my PC, iPads, phones. I played my son's game while I played my game. And so I got things going simultaneously. During that time, those last 2 years, I was in therapy with my son. And I was, telling that therapist, I was gaming a lot. First, I shared the excitement of it, but then I started minimizing it over time. And so I was basically lying by omission. He didn't know I gamed all night and all day. And that's, the last 6 months pretty much were throughout the night. There was at least a 6 to 8 hour minimum of gaming a day. I was very aggressive and territorial about gaming. So again, I would be pointing out to my husband or even my son, just because their games were time limited. Mine was on real time. And, again, I was going to do whatever I had to do to meet my goals and make certain records, break records, and be the gamer, just play the way I wanted to. Somewhere along the way, I'd start gathering shame. And I became concerned about whether my friends or my son's friends' parents learning I was gaming, because we had a lot of kids at our house all the time. Again, that's when the calendaring started coming out. As I would stay up all night, of course, I was no longer sleeping with my husband. My son started confronting me at night, like, why wasn't I in bed? Why wasn't I sleeping? And I'd say, just a few more hours, just one more record, if I do this, then this, and for a while he was very proud and very excited about the records and whatever I was making. And then I think he also felt guilty because he had originally asked me to play. And he would say, why do you have to be so competitive? And, I said, well, that's just, my personality. I didn't really know how to answer it. I found myself lying to friends and to people about my activities that I, was doing and not joining them when I got invited to things. And I avoided people. Like, I would try to get my son to answer the door if his, friends' parents were there so that they wouldn't ask me to do stuff. I didn't return phone calls. Again, if I gamed in doctor's offices and appointments or whatever. I would do it like in my purse if I had to move it to whatever device so I could keep things going. Basically, movies, musical. My husband and I love to go to theater. I would play while we were at the theater and at my son's activity. So I just wasn't being present for my life and for their lives. Sometimes I'd ask my husband to watch my game, if I showered, and which my hygiene became less and less. The last few months, really, it's disgusting for me now. But just showering and brushing your teeth, the basics. Sometimes my husband would offer to play my game for me, like at 2 a.m. if I'd be furious because I'd be so sleep deprived. He would say, how about I play it till like 6 and you get a few hours of sleep and then you can wake up. And I had just moments of clarity that it was out of control. And I just kept thinking, at some point it would end, but I thought I kind of had control over it and I'd decide when. What became clear to me by the time I found this program was that I no longer had a choice, that literally I felt enslaved, that I just didn't have a choice. So what my husband didn't know was for that last year of gaming, I would drive and game at night. My son had a lot of activities. I'd take him to activities and I'd be swerving on the road, just like, without alcohol and drugs. But with my electronic drug, I'd look up and find myself swerving, and I was a little worried about scaring my son. Not that much. I was, pretty much out to do what I wanted to do. So if he offered, let me play the game, let me take it, I would then have real condescending tones about what he did. I didn't want him to do anything. I didn't want him to screw it up, which is, a horrible message to pass on to a child and to anyone you love, My MO was not cursing in my life. And as I gamed, I found myself raging and cursing regularly, especially if the internet went out, disconnected. I worried about if I go somewhere, if they didn't have Wi-Fi or data. Found myself using some miserable tone of voice to my family. We found ourselves buying modems, routers, anything that if I, blamed problems of the game on, anything, my husband did anything to try to appease me. And we increased our data, like something ridiculous, just for my gaming. And so that I could stream while I was on vacation or when we were out of town. And then when we came back in town, I'd keep that same, data amount just because I want to make sure I had enough around town. I'd just be so dramatic and negative when I was asked to pause my game. And, or, if I didn't pause, I just ignore them. I just literally would ignore them, go in the other room, close the door. And often I would be just really negative and try to blame them for my reaction. Make them feel bad because I was having this reaction. About 2 months before I came into CJA, I decided, I needed to take a break, take a stop. And it was the one time I ever really, tried to, at that point, consciously manage gaming. Of course, I had been trying to manage it and moderate, but I didn't use those words, till I finally came to a point where I was going to stop for a while. And during those 5 days that I didn't game, I was irritable. I was emotional. I was depressed. My brain raced. I was panicking. I had anxiety. I had headaches and just obsessive thoughts about the game and about the people who would be missing me that I was gaming, at least my fantasy of that. By the time I started, gaming a few days later, I just decided, until I found something, a different game or something else that could help me, I got it. I couldn't do it on my own. And it seemed like the next 2 months were just like this major crash at gaming that was just such a sense of desperation and hopelessness. I would tell people in the game, I have a new goal, and I really believe, I tried to make myself believe it. At this point, I did. I was deep into addiction, and I was afraid of the physical and emotional consequences that I experienced while I was gaming, but even more of those to stop gaming. I had gained a lot of weight in a short amount of time. I had stopped exercising. Just the thought of gaming at that point, it would just piece me out. It would relax me. And it just seemed like I had some type of detached mind and body place I went while I gamed. It was like this numb, feeling that I, was shooting for. And really the only way I could seem to get that would be to play, endlessly without sleep. So I had moments where I realized, wow, it's like medication. It's like a drug, and that worried me. I knew enough about addiction from other things, that some moments I could see the parallels. But I wasn't, I didn't think I was a gaming addict. I had a friend who told me about a year before I stopped gaming, oh, you're a gamer. I'm like, I'm a gamer? That's ridiculous. I'm a mom, But I kind of thought that was cool. And I was, I'll take that label, especially because it was absolutely fun. That's the way I thought. Basically, it looked up like, when I did get a few hours of sleep, when I woke up in the morning, the first thing I do was check the game. I checked it throughout the day. It was like, once every few hours or once an hour at some times. If I got to go to sleep and I woke up in the middle of the night, I'd check the game. I'd just look at it, right? Stuff that I might do. I'd start thinking about things I needed to tell people they needed to do, and checking the messaging apps when people were contacting me. I pretty much thought of gaming as like mother's little helper. It just helped me get through the day. And I learned how to clean in game and shop in game and, drive in game. And when I first stopped gaming, really, I had such serious physical withdrawal and mental withdrawal. It was, everything I could do to just look at my phone and look at the weather. I felt like I, needed that. That's maybe even still a little bit with me. I have something over 100 days. About 3.5 months now. I'm still very vulnerable to triggers, but I do have a desire to be game free nowadays. Another kind of example is my father took my son and I to Paris, France, again within the last year of my gaming, and I remember not looking forward to going to France, which is ridiculous. I hadn't traveled out of the country much, and it'll be the first time my son was traveling across the pond, so to speak. And when we got there, I remember putting off different excursions we would do to say my son couldn't walk it, my father couldn't walk it, and I'd be like so relieved so that I could get back to the hotel and game. And, if I wasn't sure I was going to have a connection. So, I went way out of my way before we went on that trip to make sure I had all kinds of plugs and all kinds of chargers and anything I could do, and to plan about the game. Basically, I had no passion in that trip, and that's a very sad thing for me now. Still having a year to go in gaming, I didn't get it that at that point I was slave to it. I just thought of it as, a distraction from my gaming to have to go on the trip. In the last 6 months of gaming, I had people, who would tell me how sad they felt about me choosing the game over them. I actually, I knew women and other women that I had worked with, and they literally said that to me directly. And I remember feeling a little shame, but mostly angry and kind of lonely after. And I thought, I had friends who'd say they miss me. My husband just avoided me. He cared about me, to the point of codependency, and at times, like I said, enabling the game. But it was the one thing, we just didn't talk about it. And it was my son who more and more confronted me. When I first started that 2-year run of gaming, my son was still young enough that I'd put him to bed. I would bring the game with me, and he would, turn over and have a hard time because of the light of the game. And I tried to not have it be in his face, but eventually he asked me to stop bringing the game, and then he just eventually asked me to stop, seeing him to bed, so to speak. That one time I was going to take my 5 days without gaming, which I thought was kind of going to be the end of it or something. My son had told his teachers at school that I was very volatile at home, and that I was trying to stop gaming. And I was very ashamed because I was actually active. I had roles in the PTA at his school that, the word was out. I had been caught. At the time, I was just angry at him because I felt like he had used for why he wasn't turning in homework, which was true. But, I had a few moments where I felt like, oh my God, my kid is scared and he's telling strangers that I'm gaming. So that was, again, these little seeds that got planted by the time I found, these rooms. That last month, I was no longer cooking for my family, really, even though I could game and cook. I wasn't, I have a large dog, and I was no longer walking my dog. And, these are the things that are right there in front of my face all the time. And it was just like I couldn't even see these things anymore, just the physical things, and separate from the emotional, play. It was pretty much, my son started having more and more problems at school, and I became more and more worried that it was going to interfere with my gaming. So I was angry. I was angry about the fact that I probably needed to do something, and I started searching the internet and listening to lots of YouTube documentaries on gaming addiction. And I found CGAA through YouTube from their website, from their YouTube channel. And I listened to all those. And, somewhere in those talks and looking at the CGAA forum, I started finding a little bit of hope. Because the truth is, I didn't think I was a gaming addict. I just thought I was a pretty messed up person, which was true, but I just thought, I didn't know if it would help me. I was really thinking gaming addiction, it was like really for young people. I felt like a fake. I felt like a fake in the game. I felt like a waste in my life. And by the time I started hitting the Mumble meetings, one woman who had shared on the YouTube videos, and I just so connect with her story, I asked her, could I send her some writing that I was doing about what gaming looked like for me, and trying to figure out, do I even spend any time at CGAA, or what, do I find some other help? I just knew, I needed something. And, thank God, because she eventually became my sponsor pretty quickly after that, and got me immediately into the steps and just to little basic actions and principles. And I started going back to face-to-face 12-step meetings. It was very hard that first 2 weeks, the first month, very hard, physical withdrawal, waking up to the fact of, I couldn't believe what I looked like. I hadn't looked at myself in the mirror. I had black circles under my eyes, it seemed like, for a few weeks. What I can tell you now, and I'll kind of jump to now, is my day is about being present. It's about inviting my higher power, which is I choose to call God, into my life every morning and throughout the day if I can remember. And these are tools that I was given and had previously practiced in my life that I thought were a joke before I started gaming, and until gaming, basically whipped me. It beat me up and, brought me to that place of, basically was suicidal without saying the words. And so the 12 steps and the people in Mumble, you guys sharing, have given me so much hope and so much connection, have brought the laughter back that I originally, prized gaming for, was the laughter. And I have friends in face-to-face meetings who say, thank God you're back. I am so glad you're back. That's what they say, like I came to. Like I was in a zombie sleep or whatever in my gaming. I was miserable. And now I'm not. There's a lot of joy and a lot of laughter. My husband is repeatedly thanking me that I'm present, physically and emotionally, taking care of our family again. And my son and I now spend time playing music together. And he worries. At first, he was really grateful that I stopped gaming for the first month, but now a few months later, I think he worries about it, and he'll talk about that, about what we might miss out on together. And I kind of remind him and remind myself of well, it could look like this, and by the way, we don't know the future. We have no clue about. I just don't. I try to live in just for today, and I try to look at the first 3 steps every morning, and which is, basically honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, because I don't want to go back to where I was at. I like taking care of my body. I like getting in shape. I've lost some weight, and I like being connected to people. I really feel excited when I come on Mumble and see some people. I just like to hear your voice. I like it over the step chat a lot. And know that I'm not alone in this journey that completely consumed me as I was, struggling in my own depression, which, honestly, it was before gaming. Gaming was my solution until my solution turned on me. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. So I'm so grateful for being here and for you listening and letting me share.